At 3 a.m. on June 6, 1944, while thousands of Allied soldiers prepared to land on the beaches of Normandy, a secret radio crackled somewhere in England. A man they called Garbo began tapping out a message in Morse code that would mislead an army, delay reinforcements, and help shape the largest invasion in history. His message was not a warning, but a carefully crafted trick, a message that helped keep German forces in the wrong place at the wrong time when it mattered most. This was not just another coded telegram hidden in stacks of wartime communication. This was a message sent by a double agent who had spent months gaining the trust of the enemy, learning how to feed them exactly the information they wanted to hear. In the hours before D-Day, his transmission told the Germans that the invasion was coming, and even included details that seemed real. But it was a calculated lie, one that deepened the Germans' belief in a fake invasion site and kept many of their best troops far from the actual beaches of Normandy. By the time the full scale of the Allied landings was evident, it was too late for the Germans to use that message to their advantage. Instead, what might have been a simple radio broadcast became one of the quiet turning points of World War II. The beaches of Normandy were secured, and the liberation of Western Europe had begun, aided not just by armies and ships, but by a single message in the dark. Long before the first Allied ship hit the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944, there was a quiet war of shadows and lies happening in the airwaves. The success of the Normandy invasion did not depend only on ships, planes, and soldiers. It also depended on secret messages sent by a spy codenamed Garbo, whose false radio reports helped lure German forces away from the real invasion site. This deception was part of a larger Allied plan called Operation Fortitude, designed to trick Nazi commanders into believing that the main assault would happen far from Normandy. The story we will explore in this series is not about battlefield heroics alone. It is about how one man's crafted lies and timely transmissions convinced Hitler's generals that Normandy was just a feint, a distraction from a real attack at the Pas de Calais. His radio messages were so trusted by the Germans that they held back crucial divisions for weeks, even after June 6 had come and gone. You will learn who this spy really was, how he built a fake network of agents, why his messages were believed, and how one urgent transmission on June 9th helped shape the early days of the battle that would open the door to liberating Western Europe. This is the story of intelligence, deception, and how truth and lies can change the course of history, all through a single message. In early 1944, World War II had reached a crucial moment. The war in Europe had raged for 5 long years, and most of Western Europe was under Nazi control. The Allied forces, made up of soldiers from the United States, Britain, Canada, and other countries, were planning the largest invasion in history to free Europe from German occupation. This invasion would become known as D-Day or the Normandy landings. The main goal was to cross the English Channel and establish a strong foothold on the beaches of northern France. From there, the Allies hoped to push inland and eventually defeat Germany. But the success of this plan did not depend on sheer force alone. The Allies needed to make sure that German forces were unprepared and kept in the wrong places when the invasion began. To do that, the Allied commanders created a massive deception campaign called Operation Fortitude. Its purpose was simple yet bold: convince Germany that the Allied invasion would not take place in Normandy but somewhere else, especially at Pas de Calais, a region much closer to England and easier to attack. The Allies used fake armies, dummy tanks, staged radio traffic, and carefully crafted misinformation to make it look as real as possible. The geography of Europe played a big role in this plan. Normandy's beaches were rugged and exposed, making an invasion risky. Pas de Calais, on the other hand, offered closer and seemingly easier access for an attack from England. If the Germans believed the Allies would strike at Pas de Calais, they would keep their strongest units there and away from the real attack at Normandy. At the heart of this deception was one of the most successful double agents of the war. To the Germans, he appeared as a loyal informant reporting troop movements and invasion plans. But in reality, he was feeding them carefully chosen lies that would protect the true invasion strategy. His existence was one of the best-kept secrets of the Allied intelligence services, and his messages helped shape the battlefield before a single soldier stepped ashore in France. The man behind that message was not a trained spy when the war began. His real name was Juan Pujol Garcia, a Spanish civilian who deeply hated fascism and believed Nazi Germany had to be stopped. Instead of waiting to be recruited, he offered his services to British intelligence on his own. At first, they rejected him, but Pujol did not give up. He decided to act alone, pretending to spy for Germany while secretly planning to deceive them. Using only newspapers, public information, and imagination, Pujol convinced German intelligence that he had access to valuable military secrets in Britain. The Germans believed him so completely that they gave him the code name Alaric. Later, when British intelligence finally realized how skilled he was, they brought him into their system and gave him a new name, Agent Garbo, a tribute to his acting ability. Garbo's greatest strength was not technology or weapons, but patience and detail. He created an entire fake spy network made up of imaginary agents spread across the United Kingdom. Each agent had a name, a personality, and a role. Some were loyal, some were careless, and a few even died during the war. The Germans paid for this fake network, believing every report it produced. By 1944, Garbo had become one of Germany's most trusted sources. His reports were sent directly to senior German commanders and taken seriously at the highest levels. When he spoke, they listened. This trust made him extremely dangerous, not to the Allies, but to the enemy who believed he was working for them. And when D-Day approached, that trust would allow one carefully timed message to influence decisions that affected the entire Battle of Normandy. As the invasion date moved closer, pressure began to rise on both sides of the war. Allied commanders knew that even a small mistake could lead to disaster. German forces were strong, well-defended, and waiting along the French coast. If they realized the true target too early, they could rush reinforcements to Normandy and push the invading troops back into the sea. This made secrecy just as important as soldiers and weapons. On the German side, fear and suspicion were also growing. German intelligence expected an invasion, but they did not know where or when it would come. Reports from spies, aerial photos, and radio traffic pointed in different directions. Among all these sources, one voice stood out as calm, detailed, and reliable: Agent Garbo. German officers trusted his information more than almost any other spy they had in Britain. As June 6 approached, Garbo and British intelligence carefully shaped every message he sent. The goal was not to stay silent, but to sound active and concerned. He reported signs of an invasion force, but always linked it to Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. These messages reinforced what the Germans already believed, that the Allies would attack at the closest point across the Channel. The tension peaked on the night before D-Day. Allied ships were already moving, and paratroopers were preparing to jump into France. Garbo now had to play his most dangerous role. If his message came too early, the Germans might react. If it came too late, it would look suspicious. The timing had to be perfect. One wrong word could destroy years of trust and expose the entire deception plan. In those final hours, while armies moved in silence, the real battle of minds was reaching its breaking point. A single radio message, sent at the right moment, would decide whether German commanders stayed confused or finally understood the truth. In the early hours of June 6, 1944, as Allied forces were already crossing the English Channel, Agent Garbo made his move. Using his radio transmitter, he sent a carefully written message to German intelligence. In it, he warned that Allied troops were beginning an invasion, but he framed it as a diversion, not the main attack. He reported that the real and much larger assault would still come at Pas-de-Calais. This detail was critical because it matched exactly what German commanders already expected to hear. The message appeared urgent, but it was sent just late enough to look believable. Garbo even apologized for the delay, explaining that he had struggled to get access to his radio equipment. This small detail made the report feel human and real, not staged. German intelligence accepted the explanation without suspicion and quickly passed the message up the chain of command. As German officers read the transmission, they faced a dangerous choice. If Normandy was only a distraction, then moving troops away from Pas-de-Calais would be a serious mistake. Because Garbo had proven reliable many times before, his warning strengthened their decision to wait. Several powerful German armored divisions remained on standby, positioned far from Normandy, exactly where the Allies wanted them. This was the first real operational impact of Garbo's message. No shots were fired, no bombs dropped, yet the battlefield was already being shaped. While Allied soldiers fought to secure the beaches under heavy fire, German reinforcements that could have changed the outcome stayed frozen by doubt and false confidence. The deception was working, and the battle for Normandy had begun under conditions tilted quietly in the Allies' favor. As the sun rose over Normandy on June 6, 1944, reports of heavy fighting began reaching German headquarters. Allied troops were landing on multiple beaches, and paratroopers had dropped inland. To many German officers on the ground, it was clear that this was no small raid. Yet at higher levels of command, confusion ruled. The question was not whether an invasion was happening, but whether this was the real invasion or only the first move in a larger plan. Agent Garbo's earlier message now played a crucial role. German intelligence compared battlefield reports from Normandy with Garbo's warning that the main attack would still come at Pas-de-Calais. Instead of reacting with full force, senior commanders hesitated. They feared that moving troops south too quickly would leave Pas-de-Calais open to a much larger Allied strike. This hesitation bought the Allies precious time during the most dangerous hours of the landings. Hitler himself added to the delay. Still convinced that Normandy was a diversion, he refused to release key armored divisions without absolute proof. Several units remained locked in place, waiting for an invasion that never came. Meanwhile, Allied forces fought through heavy resistance, slowly expanding their hold on the beaches and linking up separate landing zones. By the end of the first day, the Allies had not achieved an easy victory, but they had survived the most critical phase. The German response had been slower and less coordinated than it could have been. Behind that delay was not just bad weather or command problems, but trust in a single spy whose words still carried weight. Garbo's deception continued to protect the invasion, while the battle for Normandy moved into its next, even more dangerous stage. As June 6 turned into June 7, the battle for Normandy intensified. Allied troops pushed inland, but the Germans were beginning to recognize the scale of the assault. Yet, thanks to Agent Garbo's careful deception, the strongest German units remained stationed near Pas-de-Calais. This forced the troops on the ground in Normandy to face fierce resistance from fewer, less prepared defenders. Every hill, village, and road became a battleground, and casualties mounted on both sides. German commanders faced a growing dilemma. Intelligence reports from the front clashed with Garbo's messages. Some officers wanted to move reinforcements to Normandy immediately, while others feared they were being deceived again. The tension within German ranks slowed decision-making, leaving critical units idle and preventing a coordinated counterattack that could have thrown the Allies back into the sea. For the Allies, every moment counted. Supplies had to be landed, reinforcements moved, and the foothold expanded before the Germans could react. Even a single division arriving too late could change the battle. Yet, because of the delay created by the false intelligence, Allied commanders gained the breathing room they desperately needed. Garbo's single message continued to ripple through the German command structure, shaping decisions far from the beaches. By the third day, the scale of the deception became clear. German units were still largely held back, reinforcing the Allies' belief that planning and intelligence, not just brute force, had been critical to the operation. Behind the front lines, Garbo continued sending carefully crafted updates, keeping the Germans convinced that Normandy was only the beginning of a greater threat elsewhere. By June 9, 1944, the full significance of Garbo's actions was clear. Allied troops had secured the beaches and begun moving deeper into Normandy, but the German High Command was still cautious. Garbo sent a final, urgent message, claiming that the Allied landings were only a diversion and that the real attack would hit Pas-de-Calais soon. This message was meticulously timed to arrive just as German commanders were debating whether to send reinforcements. The effect was immediate. German generals, still convinced of the false threat, held back their most powerful armored divisions. Hitler himself refused to authorize their movement, believing it would play into an Allied trap. Meanwhile, in Normandy, the Allies continued their advance with reduced opposition from well-trained German units. The beaches were secure, supply lines were being established, and momentum was firmly in Allied hands. This moment marked the climax of Garbo's deception campaign. One carefully written radio message, sent under the cover of night, had shifted the balance of the battle. It was a turning point not in gunfire or tank assaults, but in the minds of generals thousands of miles away. Allied success at Normandy was being shaped as much by strategy and intelligence as by courage on the beaches. In this single act, the war of information achieved what brute force alone could not. It delayed reinforcements, sowed confusion, and gave the Allies a crucial advantage in the largest amphibious invasion in history. The beaches of Normandy, soaked in courage and sacrifice, were also a testament to the power of deception. After the initial days of intense fighting, the Allies had established a firm foothold in Normandy. The beaches were no longer just landing zones. They were supply lines, staging grounds, and symbols of a turning tide in the war. Soldiers moved inland, linking sectors, clearing resistance, and securing villages. Every successful advance owed something to the delay caused by Garbo's messages, which kept German reinforcements away during the most vulnerable hours. The Germans suffered not only heavy losses on the beaches, but also the frustration of being misled. Entire armored divisions remained near Pas-de-Calais, unable to support frontline units effectively. Commanders realized too late that their most trusted agent had been feeding them lies, yet the confusion and delay had already determined the early course of the battle. On the Allied side, the victory came with a heavy cost. Thousands of soldiers were wounded or killed, and equipment had been lost in the chaotic landing operations. Yet the delay of German counterattacks, caused by Garbo's deception, allowed reinforcements, supplies, and leadership to stabilize the front. Without that extra time, the initial landings might have ended in disaster. The immediate aftermath of the invasion demonstrated the power of intelligence and careful planning. Garbo's message was invisible to the world, but its impact was concrete. It had saved lives, enabled a successful landing, and set the stage for the liberation of France. The stage was now set for the next phase of the battle, where the Allies would push further inland and confront the full might of the German army. The successful deception during the Normandy invasion did more than secure the beaches. It had a lasting impact on the entire war effort. By keeping German forces tied up at Pas-de-Calais, the Allies were able to establish supply lines, reinforce troops, and build momentum for the liberation of Western Europe. This intelligence victory complemented battlefield success, showing that strategy, cunning, and deception could be just as decisive as guns and tanks. Agent Garbo's influence extended beyond Normandy. His careful reports strengthened Allied confidence in their broader deception strategies. encouraging planners to continue using misinformation to mislead enemy forces in subsequent operations. The Germans, having been thoroughly deceived once, became increasingly cautious, giving the Allies an edge in future campaigns across Europe. Strategically, the Normandy deception delayed German counterattacks for weeks, allowing the Allies to consolidate gains and push inland with greater effectiveness. Cities were liberated, supply lines secured, and a foothold established that ultimately led to the defeat of Nazi Germany. What might have been a bloody stalemate became an opportunity for decisive action, shaped in part by the unseen hand of a single spy. In the larger context of World War II, Garbo's message demonstrated the power of intelligence operations. While battles are often remembered for the bravery of soldiers, the careful planning, strategy, and subtle manipulation of the enemy also played a critical role in the outcome. One radio message had ripple effects far beyond its initial transmission, influencing decisions at the highest levels of the German military. After the liberation of Normandy and the subsequent Allied advance through France, the full importance of Agent Garbo's work became clear. Juan Pujol Garcia had not fired a single bullet, yet his deception had saved countless lives and helped secure the success of the largest amphibious invasion in history. His careful planning, patience, and imagination turned him into one of the most effective spies of World War II. Garbo's legacy went beyond Normandy. He received honors from both Britain and, later, Spain, yet he remained humble, insisting that his actions were part of a larger effort by the Allies. His story became a symbol of how intelligence, creativity, and courage can influence world events just as much as tanks, planes, or soldiers. Historians continue to study his contributions, emphasizing that D-Day was not only a feat of military might, but also a victory of the mind. The deception campaign he helped lead changed the decisions of enemy generals, delayed reinforcements, and altered the course of the war. In the annals of history, Garbo is remembered as the man whose single message helped tilt the balance in favor of freedom. His story also serves as a lesson for future generations. Intelligence, strategy, and subtle influence can be as powerful as the battlefield itself. Through one careful act of deception, a single individual helped change the fate of millions. Now that you know how one spy's single message influenced the outcome of D-Day, consider this. What other hidden acts might have quietly shaped history? Intelligence, deception, and courage often go unnoticed, yet they can change the course of events more than any single battle. Which part of Agent Garbo's story surprised you the most? His imagination, his patience, or the way he fooled an entire army? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to discover more hidden stories of spies, secret operations, and moments that altered history, make sure to watch our full documentary on the unsung heroes of World War II. This is the story of how the unseen and the clever can tip the scales of history, proving that sometimes a single message is more powerful than 1,000 guns.